All right. Welcome to the Dude Real Estate Show. We're going to do something a little new here. Every week, I've got my friend Billy here. Billy is interested in investing in real estate. We actually met at a real estate investment meetup maybe a year ago, something like that. And so I guess before we dive into anything, I'll just say that this is kind of like a coaching session, if you want to call it that, but it's really just a free flowing conversation between two guys who like real estate investing and are interested in it. I'm a little farther in my journey than Billy is. So that's why I'm here to talk with him about what he's dealing with. I was going to put out a course that kind of outlined everything, but I thought it would be a lot more interesting for you guys watching or listening to this, to that maybe you're in his shoes, maybe you haven't bought a deal yet. And so you can listen in on these conversations, be a fly on the wall, and hopefully pick up some value. And even if you've invested in real estate before, I think there might be some stuff that we talk about, whether it's this episode or a future one, that would bring you some value. So it's pretty much going to focus on real estate investing, but I'm sure we'll go off the rails too. So anyway, Billy, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and why you're here.
Sure. So my name's Billy. I'm interested in real estate investing. I have been for a number of years now. I have not pulled the trigger on a real estate investment deal, but I have purchased two businesses in the past year or so. One being a salon suite that operates like a rental property, where we manage the units and rent out the suites to private hairstylists. And then the other one being a house cleaning business, so residential cleaning, as well as apartments. So done a couple things on that side, but really want to get more into real estate to see more value and passive opportunities there than I do from the businesses. So try not to take up all my time.
Right. Yeah. And now both these businesses are essentially side hustles for you, right?
Yeah, yep. So I've got a full-time job. I work in inside sales from a medical supply company, and these are things that I've kind of picked up on the side. The home cleaning business feels like more than a side hustle. Feels like it takes up a lot more time than the salon business that I'm in. But yeah, definitely want to get further into either the salon or real estate specifically.
Okay. And so we've talked before about the salon business, but you don't own real estate with that, correct? You essentially, you kind of took over a lease, or you own a lease. That's part of how you guys bought that.
Correct. So there was already one of the people who rented there owned the business that rented out to everyone else, and she wanted to step away from the leasing aspect or the management of the business and just focus on her hairstyle business. So we came in there and purchased the business and now manage the spaces. And she continued to rent from us. So that was a great value add right out of the gates.
Mm-hmm. And so you kind of have some experience with leasing with tenants,
Mhm.
stuff like that. So
Yeah.
when it comes to real estate, that will be a good skill that you already kind of have
Yeah.
a grasp on for sure. Um, so I guess, you know, the first place I start with people when talking about real estate is just, I mean, obviously you're interested in real estate investing. I mean, that's one thing, but I guess
Mhm.
the big question is why real estate investing? Why not just continue to buy some of these other businesses?
Yeah, so I think the second business, I bought the salon first, and then the cleaning business second to help clean the salon because it needs to be cleaned really often. Um, but the thing I learned most in the second business is that businesses take time to run, and I don't feel like there's never a chance to really take myself out of the business because there was a lot of moving parts that needed to be managed by myself or someone else. And I don't think it has the scalability because it's so easy to get into that business to start something like that. Our cleaners could easily, with $500 start a cleaning business and, market to people. So there's not a high overhead for them to, there's not a strong reason for them to continue to work for us unless they just don't want to deal with anybody and they just want to do cleaning. So that didn't feel like something that was worth scaling. And I felt like the better we did, the more work I was going to have to put in. It didn't feel like it was going to go down. So I think that's kind of how I got a reminder that the reason I wanted to go into these things is to save more time, like get more of my time back, not spend all my days, hustling and grinding, and get back to, focusing on things that I can scale, things that I can put systems in place that I don't have to, I guess, be involved in the business as heavily as I have been in these last two ventures.
Right, because the businesses probably have to be a certain size before you could really warrant having like a manager
Exactly.
for the business. And so essentially you and your partner are acting as the managers of those businesses.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
The salon is almost big enough where we can kind of get a property manager in there. But right now it doesn't make sense for us financially to work that yet. But I definitely think, yeah, once you get into those bigger units, if you're looking at a salon suite, then there is an option to do that.
Yeah, the nice thing about real estate investing is it can be pretty hands off. I mean, sometimes you got to get your hands dirty or you got to get involved in certain things, but it can be as hands off as you want it to be too. So sometimes there's a little upfront work, especially with the education piece and then maybe looking for properties. But honestly, the better you get at it and the more knowledge you have, like the easier it gets in my opinion, because
Mhm.
the last property we bought, we didn't even see it. We still haven't seen it. And we have a property manager and it just makes us money. So, I think that's kind of
Mhm.
what people are looking for. They want that kind of passive cash flow. And we still have some things that might pop up. Obviously, a bigger repair is going to require a little bit of our attention, not much. Usually it's just answering an email, but um, and then things like refinancing or when you're actually putting in the work to like get a property or if you have to do any significant rehab, there's always going to be time there, and then doing the books too. So unless you're hiring someone to really keep all your books too, that's going to fall on somebody, whether it's you or a
Mhm.
partner. I really am terrible at bookkeeping. Luckily, my partner's a financial advisor and he's really good at it. So he kind of manages that side of things.
Yeah.
So that's how our partnership works out well for me. I don't know if it works out well for him, but
Right.
um, so yeah. So the reason I'm asking about like why real estate, I think that's what appeals to a lot of people. It does feel like it can be more passive, unless you're doing something like flipping houses or if you're actually a property manager or real estate agent. But if you're investing in cash flow properties, it can be pretty attractive. To get back to the question of why, like I can see like with a lot of people that are interested in real estate investing, it is attractive because of that passive income that can come in. Um, why why real estate? Why investing in these other side hustles? What is it about wanting to develop some more cash flow and some different streams of income? What is kind of the driving factor behind that for you?
Yeah, that's the big why. So I think the big thing is all about getting more time back to be with, friends, family, um, anything that allows me to have more freedom in my life. If I want to take the week off, like I I have to have PTO for my day job to do that. Like I can't just not work, otherwise I don't get paid. So it's allowing myself to have the opportunity to still make money without having to contribute my time towards the process.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's really good that you kind of realize that and it sounds like, I mean, freedom is usually a big thing, but then the question beyond that for that I usually ask is like, why the freedom though? And it seems like, you want to be there for your family. You
Mhm.
have other things that you'd be interested in probably pursuing as well. So, what I think where some people make the mistake is they're like, well, I just need as much money as possible,
Mhm.
so that I can live however I want.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, though, it's like finances are not enough. Like if it's just about the money, you're going to give up at some point because it does get really hard. And I'm sure you've had some experiences in investing in these businesses that have been like super difficult. Like possibly like when the pandemic started and you have a salon and no one's going to work and maybe not paying rents. I mean, that can be stressful, or there might have been something else. Was there something with either of these businesses that has been hard to get through?
Yeah, yeah. When the government shut everything down, it was really difficult with specifically the salon because if they're not working, they're not cutting hair, doing all the stuff that they do. They're not making money, and that has a ripple effect up the chain. So up to us, if they're not making money, if they're not able to pay us, then we're not able to pay our rent, which goes up to the landlord of our landlord. So it's kind of all in a cycle, and you can really see it when you're a part of it, which is cool to experience that. But at the same time, yeah, it was just difficult to push through on that time. We offered a deferment plan, just like our landlord offered us a deferment plan to a lot of the tenants, and it was the one of the best things we could do. And then we also offered a discount on the I guess the maintenance that we didn't have to account for with people not working. So heating, water costs, stuff like that,
Right.
electrical.
Right. Yeah. And that's not going to be like your first hiccup in business
Mm.
or in real estate either. So, I've gone through some really tough stuff too with, flipping houses or, I mean, one house that we bought, we ended up having, it was a 2-unit building,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what it had been for decades.
Yeah.
And we did make a mistake. I mean, sometimes it can be a mistake, something it can be outside circumstances, but we didn't check the zoning on the property. We just assumed that it was a zone for multi-family use, and it was not. And so when we went to do a refinance, to do a cash out refinance after we had done some work on it, we learned that we couldn't get it underwritten because it was illegal non-conforming. So what we ended up having to
Um,
do, we could have left it like that. The city really didn't care,
yeah.
but we wanted our money back so we could move on to the next deal. And so what we had to do was deconvert from a 2-family to a single family. So we had just put a brand new kitchen in the upstairs unit. So we had to rip all that out and cut stairs down through that area.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, we salvaged all the appliances and the cabinets. We actually put a new kitchen downstairs. So we were able to like save some of that, but it still ended up costing us probably $10,000 in a couple months of lost rent. And then at the end of the day, our numbers looked really good as a 2-unit, but as a single family, they weren't nearly as good. We lost a
Right.
couple $100 in cash flow there. So, that was a lesson that we learned, but it's like some people would give up at that point, but that was not what we were looking to do. And so I'm along the same lines as you. Like I want ultimately freedom so that I can spend more time doing other things that I want. So I can spend more time with my family, so I can spend more time outdoors,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, helping out, our church or a charity or whatever it could be. It's like when your
Mm-hmm.
time is all tied up over here and you have
Mm-hmm.
obligations, then you're stuck. It's
Yeah.
like you might be making money, you might even be making really good money, but that's really the appeal of having a business, being your own boss, or developing um, something like a small real estate portfolio to
Mhm.
help offset some of your expenses. So I think you're at a good place there. One book I always mention to people is this one right here, Start With Why by Simon Sinek. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but that's a really good
Yeah.
book. If you guys are watching this on YouTube or something, go check out his channel. You can search for Start With Why. And there's a really interesting video that he did a long time ago that kind of focuses in on kind of what we've been talking about. But yeah, check out that book if you haven't
Yeah.
read it, because it's a lot of people, they're focused on the what and the how, and that's really like that's farther down the line that you need to worry about. So yeah, figure out yourself, and it sounds like you've kind of figured out that part, as far as that goes. So that's good. Um, is there anything else, I guess, along those lines that I don't know that maybe you have questions about, like when it comes to real estate, like especially getting started? Like, I mean, my why was pretty big, so I hustled, like, but I was doing real estate agent stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was kind of, I was making money there, but then I was able to also kind of be in that same industry. How do you kind of separate what you're doing, because you have a full-time job, then you have these 2 businesses,
Yeah.
and then you also want to do real estate, and it doesn't sound like you can hand off management quite yet to the businesses. So
Mm-hmm.
what do you think that looks like managing your time to, pursue something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I ask myself that probably on the weekly. How am I going to keep up with all this as I keep going and try to get further along? I think right now the big thing is just time blocking things that I'm working on. Like I have a set time that I'm supposed to be working on this business, specifically in a weekly time frame that I can work on these things. Um, and I think that's why I wanted to reach out to you specifically for the real estate side is I'm getting lost at just looking at deals, and I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. I feel like I spend an hour looking at deals, analyzing a deal, and even if it's a good deal, I don't really know exactly what to do. And so for me, the big issue is how do I a make sure I continue to manage my time, and b how do I act on these things that I'm seeing without going over the top and making it so I can't keep up with all the stuff I'm doing. So yeah, it's a balance right now, and I think that's was one of the big reasons I wanted to work on this together. Is I think I don't know how to balance the time for the real estate because I'm not
Sh-
exactly sure what the steps are.
Sure. So how much time are you putting into it right now? Like when you're looking at deals and you're setting aside X amount of hours per week, what's your process right now?
I would say I probably spend 2 to 4 hours a week looking at deals.
Okay. And each deal, like when you're looking at deals, are if you see something that like interests you about a certain one, maybe because you're probably looking at hundreds potentially, but then there
Mhm.
might be one or two or three that are like, okay, that one that might have potential. So then are you digging a little deeper, looking at the numbers,
Yeah.
looking at comps, stuff like that?
Yeah. So yeah, if I see something I like, I pull up a spreadsheet and I dive into okay, if I buy it for this price, list price, and it rents for these numbers that are part of the listing because I've been looking at multifamily recently in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin market. They have it listed. So then I put that in. I have kind of a general breakdown of okay, if I have to pay 10% for management fees, property management fees, I have that in there. And what I expect to pay, for capex or anything like that. So I try to look at it and then based off the list price, is this going to make money? And a lot of times at the list price, it doesn't, or it's barely cash flowing. So um, or if it is doing really well, I'm kind of like, well, this looks good, but I don't really know anyone in that market or something like that because I've kind of just been looking all over Wisconsin. And I haven't been able to focus on a specific market. So that's another issue that I think I'm running into is, how do you manage your time with where you should be investing and stick to that market because there's so many opportunities out there that I kind of have I don't know, shiny object syndrome where I just see something that looks good, makes money. Okay, let's try to do it. And I think you need a team in place to manage that. Otherwise, it'll fall apart quickly.
Right, right. Yeah. So it sounds like so you're putting in a fair amount of time. I mean, 2 to 4 hours a week is quite a bit of time just to kind of really just be analyzing properties.
Hmm.
But then on the flip side, you're kind of looking in many different places in the
Yeah,
state, and so there's a kind of a lack of probably not a lack of focus, but you're trying to figure out if you could focus those 2 to 4 hours on one specific area,
yeah,
then you're going to get farther faster.
right.
So I guess the question is like, why are you looking all over the state? Is it just because you can get more cash flow somewhere else, or what's kind of going on there?
Yeah, I think it's looking for more cash flow, and I just think when you're looking on the MLS or listings, there's only a finite number of listings that are out there if you're not, doing anything that's off market. So you kind of have to whittle down what you have on the market on the MLS or what's listed. So um, I think that's what kind of gets me stuck and going in different directions is, you know, there's only a handful of listings in, the Madison market or in the La Crosse market. So once I run out of going through those and say I don't find anything, I'm like, yes, I'm going to move on this, go to the next market because I don't see any other listings. So um, I think maybe that's kind of a problem, is maybe I need to find someone in the market who's actually doing deals, or a property management company that's there, and look and see if they have anything that's coming up that's not on the market yet, or just focusing on that. And if I don't have anything that day that's in that market, okay, do something else. Like, I think that's maybe where I'm getting stuck.
Okay. What's the farthest away that you're willing to look in the state, or how far have you looked?
I've looked in Milwaukee. I've been up to Oshkosh area, Appleton area. And then I've gone as far west as Richland Center and down to Beloit. So,
Okay. So
uh,
up
100 miles.
hour and a half ish on
Yeah.
average. Yeah.
from-
Which is not bad. I mean, if you want to be a hands-on landlord and be able to see your property, like, the funny thing is the very first property we bought was about 2 miles from my house.
Mhm.
But once we finished all the work, I never drove by that house again. Like, it was like, once it was kind of stabilized, like, it was out of sight, out of mind. So I think on one hand, it's good to get that hands-on experience, whether it's literal or kind of figurative, with that first property. So I think a lot of people start there and they're like, I want something that's decently close so that they can experience the whole process, everything from evaluating the neighborhood that they can put eyes on it,
Mhm.
to purchasing it, doing the home inspection, doing any work that needs to be done, and then finding those tenants.
Mhm.
Um, but after that, with technology especially, there's not that much that you have to do. And if you even put property management on it, then there's really almost nothing that you have to do.
Mhm.
So I'm not saying don't invest close to home, because there could be a good experience there.
Right.
Uh, but at the end of the day, like you said earlier, it's about building a team, because you're going
Mhm.
to have the same team, whether it's 2 minutes from your house or 2,000 miles from your house. It's going to be basically the same team. It's a little farther away, kind of
Sure.
thing. So I think there is something to say for, maybe with the first property, maybe stay close to home. But if you could stomach it, I'd almost look at other markets, because an hour and a half, I mean, you could go, just double that, go 3 hours, and then you're in a couple different states. You could be in Iowa or Illinois or Michigan or Minnesota.
Yeah.
Or double it again, and you can, I mean, it could be anywhere. Of course, then
Right.
that gets tricky, because it's like, okay, now we're really expanding things, and what we don't know what we're looking for
Mhm.
exactly. But if you're looking for cash flow, you can kind of just figure out which markets in the US are, cash flow. And I do find that mostly Midwest, you're going to find decent cash flow.
Mhm.
um a lot of people invest in, like, Indiana and Ohio and Kentucky, kind of the Rust Belt, and they get a lot of cash flow. But there are some other problems that can potentially come with cash flow too. You're not necessarily going to get um, price appreciation.
Mhm.
Um, you might get some, we're seeing more and more people go south,
Mhm.
for warmer weather or for other opportunities or whatever it may be. And so a lot of these cities are kind of emptying out a little bit. So you have to be careful about that. Um, so yeah, I think it's just important to nail down your criteria, and then you figure out which markets make the most sense. And maybe for your first one, you do stay as close to home as possible. But
Yeah.
if you're finding that deals are so expensive,
Mhm.
um, that's like the number one thing that's going to kill your cash flow. If it's too expensive, I mean, how are you going to cash flow? That
Yeah.
was the one thing when we were buying in Illinois. It's not that the houses were that expensive, although that was part of it. It was that the property taxes were so expensive,
Mhm.
like 3 times as much as, neighboring states. So it's like,
Mhm.
that's what killed the cash flow. It wasn't the prices. You would think, oh yeah, $150,000 house. Oh, but the taxes are $5,000, where somewhere else they would be like 1,200.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways to think about cash flow. So, I don't know if you're open to exploring other markets, but I think first it's probably most important to figure out your risk tolerance. What
Mhm.
what what do you think? I mean, I think you have some tolerance for risk just because you've bought a couple of businesses.
Yeah.
So I think you'd probably be willing to buy out of state, even if it was your first deal.
Yeah.
I'm not pushing you that way. I just think you would have, I think you're capable of it for sure.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. And I had started to push. Have spent, I have gotten in contact with a property manager in the Florida market. They manage um, in Orlando, but they also do some stuff on the western half of Florida as well. And I'm on a list that I receive deals from as well. So yeah, I do. I think I had the risk tolerance to go out of state, um, and I'm not afraid of that because I feel like I've learned in the businesses that it takes a team to do something. So I don't see it as something that requires me to be able to see it to be a good deal.
Right. And I'd still recommend you go see it. But you just bake
Maybe
that into
for the
your expenses. I mean, it's going to be, you're going to spend a couple $100 on a flight and maybe a couple $100 on a hotel and meals and stuff like that. So just, you're going to spend an extra $500 to see your deal. Maybe you get it under contract and then you go
Mhm,
see it for the home inspection and
mhm,
meet the property manager, all that kind of stuff. But you kind of have some pieces already set, like a property manager, a realtor. Sometimes the property manager can act as the realtor.
yeah,
Um, I think, yeah, when you're exploring other markets, that's the first place I would start as a property manager. I wouldn't even look for a realtor. Uh, Property manager is going to be your most important piece of the puzzle, and they have all the connections really. So
right,
if you vet the property manager, then 80% of your work is already done because you don't even have to find that maintenance person. You don't have to find that realtor because either they're going to take care of it or they can recommend a realtor either at their brokerage or another.
sure,
And yeah, it just gets much easier at
yeah,
that point.
okay,
So, but it's the same thing if you're investing close to home too, because you're
mhm,
probably not going to self manage the property your entire life. At some point, you're going to get tired of it or want to put it under management, or you got too much, you're buying all these other businesses and you're focused on that.
yeah,
You're probably not going to want to, do 30 showings to find a tenant.
yeah, no. So for you, and I know you alluded to you have some in Illinois, you have some in other states. When you switched from buying in Illinois to a different state, how did that process go, or how did you figure out where to go and to know it made sense?
So I think it was the third property we bought was a duplex in South Carolina. The reason South Carolina is because my partner moved to South Carolina. And
Okay.
so he found that deal there. It was within an hour of him.
Mm,
And, that's another property I've never seen in person, so it's just that one's over there. Um, and then beyond that, it was just we were looking for deals all over the country, really, because we were looking for a larger multifamily, and then we found one down south. So we bought that, and then that property manager brought us another deal that we closed on earlier this year. And now we're
mhm,
actually looking at another deal right now from the same property manager. So once you get that team, and then once they know that you're serious too, it's like, okay,
mhm,
these guys do buy. They buy properties. Then they're gonna bring you stuff when it comes up.
okay.
So once you find that market and focus in on it, and you know that, like, okay, this is probably the cash flow I can expect. So now
Mhm,
I'm going to look for a property manager. And I would even say, I would go as far as to say, even if you love the demographics and the cash flow you could get in that area, but you
mhm,
can't find a property manager that you mesh with, move on to a different area. Because you don't want to be in an awesome area with, like, where you're kind of on the fence with a property manager. Um, they're so important to the health of your business
mhm,
that that's the first person you vet.
okay. So when you were looking across the country, were you specifically reaching out to property management companies, or were you doing, demographic research using some sort of online sites to determine this, and then, fact check what the rents are going to potentially be, or how does that work on your end? I don't know. I picture there being a lot of things that you could do,
Right.
and
Yeah.
maybe a process.
Yeah, the apartment building was just a screaming deal. So uh, we we got it under contract,
Mhm.
and then we went down to see it. And uh, the biggest thing for us really, what it was two things. It was learning more about the general area, because you can look at demographics online, but then you actually get a feel when you're like driving around the town and
Sure.
checking things out. And so we didn't know what to expect. So we were pleasantly surprised that it had a very robust local economy, and it was only an hour from a very big city,
Hmm.
um, and close to a state university, stuff like that.
Nice.
And then the other piece of the puzzle was the property manager. And so we spent an entire day with the property manager and got to know him and his processes and how he did business.
Hmm.
And that was really just it. Like, we just needed to have that comfort level with him to be able to continue down the due diligence path with the property. So, and that's the same property manager that's brought us, a couple more deals over the last couple of years too.
Sure. Okay. How did you find the deal in the first place? Did he bring it to you originally, or
No, my buddy found it on LoopNet,
okay?
and yeah, we just kind of dove into everything about it, and we basically knew what the condition of the property was and stuff like that, and we had the rent roll and all that kind of stuff. So the financial side looked good. Like I said, it was just more like demographics, property management, and then he had already managed that property for, I think it was around 10 years.
Really?
So
Okay.
he had already been managing it. And so we just met with him first, since he knew everyone. And when we walked the apartments with him, it's like he's greeting everyone by name. He knows everyone. He knows everyone's stories. He's a local guy, so he knows pretty much everyone. It's kind of got a small town feel to it. And he's
Sure.
maybe not as hard on some of the tenants as maybe some other property management companies would be like, oh, that's, this time every year he gets a little light on work, but he always pays, so I just give him an extra couple weeks, he'll pay. And so he's just like, he kind of knows their stories and their history,
Right.
and that's been really helpful for us to have him as boots on the ground.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I think that'll kind of wrap us up for today. Next week we'll get into some other stuff, but I think this is a good start. And as you guys kind of follow Billy's journey, I mean, really the end goal, I want to help Billy like find a property somewhere, like whether it's 10 minutes away or 10 hours away.
Yeah.
uh we want to see him succeed and get involved in real estate investing. So uh yeah, so we'll be here next week, and we'll dive into another topic. So thanks for watching or listening, and we will see you guys next time.